what I like. Yes, indeed. Right on, right on. Welcome back. Yes, once again to I Mix What I Like Live. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host here at Black Power Media. Welcome back. Welcome back. Please invite your friends, foes, family, comrades, colleagues, collaborators to join us and or to check it out. If you're watching this later on the replay, hit the like, share, join, subscribe buttons, all of them if you can. Hit the bell. Make sure you get all the whatevers, all the updates and all the alerts. And so that you don't miss anything that I and my comrades here at Black Power Media are doing, which is just ever increasing. So let's see. Let me just sure you have the link to join the studio. Just making sure our guest has I was sure I had gotten it to him since he has not yet gotten here. Sure, I'll just say he does have it. Again, this is unbelievable with the connection. I've been sitting here getting all set up and waiting, and there's been no connection issue until now. That is amazing. And I don't understand how there could be one. It's like StreamYard waits for us to go live, and then it does something. I think we really got to look into this because there could be no way. The computer is fully Wi-Fi signaled. The connection is incredibly fast and strong. I added another whatchamacallit to enhance and put it literally right here. So there's nothing, it's unbelievable. But my point is I'm endeavoring to make sure that on our end, everything is done correctly. And StreamYard continues to cause failures here. So anyway, I hope you were able to check out the interview we did this morning with Professor Nimps, August Nimps, about his criticism of Cedric Robinson's Black Marxism. Fantastic discussion. I thought so, at least. Use a cable. Yeah, I hear you. So I'm sharing with you what I am, not because we haven't done and tried and set up everything. It's not that I appreciate the suggestion. It's not for lack of understanding or knowing that it's that the thing isn't working. And it's not possible to use an Ethernet instead of Wi-Fi in this setup, and nor should it be. I mean, but the connection isn't the issue, is what my point would be, good people. The issue, because the connection is strong. So there's something with StreamYard, because the connection to all of the devices is strong. The connection throughout the house, I mean, it's incredibly strong. So that it's not just as simple as, but I appreciate the suggestions. But no, it's not for a lack of understanding or recognition of that. It's that I think it's a StreamYard issue. Because there is literally never a problem with anything else or any other, so anyway, wait, by the way, he just let us know. I also hope you got to hear the interview that Brother Kalanji did earlier, or replaying the classic with Max Stanford. Very important work. And then he's going to be back today at 5 p.m. Eastern with a live discussion with Abiodun. I can never pronounce his last name. Brother Abiodun from The Last Poets. So you don't want to miss that. That's at 5 o'clock Eastern today, freshly announced here at Black Power Media. So we're looking forward to that. as well. So while I tell you what, so I'll just say this while we're waiting for our guest, I'll just go ahead and do our introduction so that when he gets here, it's all ready to go. Um, Bob Brown, who is set to join us here, is a longtime activist in a number of different formations. And what he wanted to join us here to talk about today was specifically his involvement in the founding of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party, his involvement in which was in March of 1968. He wants to talk with us about his time in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and the break with SNCC that led to his involvement with Kwame Ture in the development of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and where he was saying that at the time that he was on his way out of the Black Panther Party formation, he was looking to help build within the AAPRP something that would have included the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, the Black Liberation Army, and other independent Black Power organizations to be part of it. So he's been around in it at the sort of the crux, or at the nexus, rather, I should say, of a lot of different important formations and politics, and definitely wanted to give him a chance to talk with us about that as well. I did think, you know what, in the interim, while we were waiting, there was something that kind of came up that I thought. So when we were taping the last, let's see, let me pull this up here, because when we were taping the last episode of The Last Dope Intellectual, and Dr. CBS was interviewing Dedan Wakuri, it was brought to our attention that Dedan had been in a friendly, I should say, I wouldn't say friendly, a polite discussion or exchange with Roland Martin, who had showed up with Reverend Crump down there in North Carolina. And there's two things that I wanted to bring up about that. And since we have a couple of minutes here, it looks like since Bob isn't here, and then I'll say this, if for some reason Bob isn't able to show up, I will check with you all in the comments and chats. If you all want to get into anything while we're all here, feel free to raise them. Otherwise, we can, we could just wrap up and reconvene another time. Although I'm hoping he gets here. We've been preparing for this for a minute. So I've sent out the email alert. We'll give him a couple minutes. Certainly if professors can have it mandated that students have to wait 15 minutes for us if we're late, then absolutely we can give at least that much time to somebody like Bob Brown if they're running a bit behind. But it also does give me a chance, because I was thinking about I would want to do something with this anyway, so we might as well just, But so there's two parts to this. One is, well, three, I guess. There's the exchange itself, which I would like to share with you in just a minute, to the extent that we can. There is another part of it that I'm not going to share because one, I don't have it prepared, and the other, I don't know that I would want to really give these folks credit, and I'll explain why in a second. Because there was a video that Dr. CBS, I think, pulled off of his Dedan's Facebook page and sent to me, which was a sister who was playing an excerpt of the originally documented exchange on her phone and offering an if not a fully, agreeable, certainly an entertaining critique. She is not friendly with Roland Martin. She's on another platform that is critical of Roland Martin. but is one that I'm also very critical of. She's on the platform with Boyce Watkins, so which I wouldn't want to big up anyway. And it makes it easier for me to do that because in her use of the video, I watched almost all of it. She never gives credit to the people who documented the original footage. I recognize the logo because I actually watched that channel, and it's the channel I've referenced here before, Status Quo, who often find themselves live and in these protests. Now, interestingly, and this is another aside, they are a progressive white outlet, and not knowing all the nuances of obviously of Black politics, they have also, because they run into him, had friendly, positive exchanges with Roland Martin too, because he of course can make it to these places and claim, as he often does, to be the only Black, media operation. By the way, not just to challenge Roland Martin or to compete with what he's doing, but this is in part why we're asking people to become members of Black Power Media, because the more money we raise, it's not for us as individual hosts or even owners of the channel. It is to hopefully, at least in part, be able to fund on the ground independent investigative reporting for us to cover these things, so we don't have to rely on anyone else or what has gone on with this thing. So in this case, so this sister gets this white leftist outlet or progressive outlets coverage of this Roland Martin, Daydan Wakiri exchange, does not credit them, Status Quo, as I will, and then I'll explain that even farther in just a moment. And is critical of Roland Martin, I think fairly, but or I would agree with at least some of them being critical of Roland Martin, or at least wanting to establish that he's not the only one doing this work. But they don't know the politics, or they don't know who Daydan is. So they never credit Daydan. They never credit Status Quo. They're just happy to see a brother challenging Roland Martin. I did reach out to Status Quo because I recognized their logo and asked them to help me find the particular video. They did respond, thankfully. I appreciate them, and pointed me to the video, which I have. Now, unfortunately, their interest wasn't the exchange between Roland Martin and Daydan. They were actually out there trying to cover the live entire gathering. Selfishly and somewhat admittedly petty, in my pettiness, I wanted them to have, I wish they would have stayed on that and covered it some more. Because I think the only other cameras there were Roland's, and I'm not aware that he did anything with the footage, and I don't think Daydan was either. And as you all know, he mentioned that during the last Open Intellectual. Is who? That's interesting. Who just logged? Okay, hold on a second. Let me just see and make sure, see if this is. Oh, it is Bob. Okay, how did he log in? Okay, why? Okay. All right, Bob is here. And let me just make sure. Let me just see. He might. Let me just. Anyway, we can come back to this after, or either after our discussion with Bob, or another time. But anyway, I've already done the introduction. Let's see if we might just be doing audio here today. Bob, good afternoon.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I guess
you might have problems seeing me.
Yeah, we don't see you.
Okay, I'm not TV presentable anyway. Let's roll.
All right, well, let's roll. So I did the intro. I talked about a little bit about who you are and what you wanted to do here. So as I said, you wanted to focus on, you said specifically between June 1964 and July 1969 to sort of set some of the narrative correct. Starting with your founding of well, not starting with, but including your founding of the Black Panther Party chapter in Chicago. So welcome to the show, and the floor is yours. If you want to start us off with, I guess June of '64, and let us know what it is about the history that we have wrong, what it is you would like to correct, and why. We can start there.
Okay, let me first of all apologize. I'm sitting here with 3 computers, 2 telephones, and 2 people, and we're having all kind of technological issues and whatnot. So that's why you can hear me, but you can't see me, and we'll fix these problems over the next day or two. We've made presentations similar to this in about 7 countries. We were recently at Erasmus University in Amsterdam last February before the COVID lockdown. And the presentation changes as new research, we find new materials. For example, we just got a trove of CIA documents on the struggle to build the Panther Party. So it's an ongoing, it's not definitive. It's not definitive. We have a problem with that word. Things change as new generations come online, as new research, as new understanding, whatever. Let's shotgun it because I know we're late. A cat does not have one kitten at a time. A panther is a cougar, a jaguar, a lion with excessive melanin. Litters can have 3 to 7 kittens per time. I know the Black Panther movement, it was never a monolithic party, never a monolithic party. And that is part of the confusion that exists for the last 50 some odd years in academia, in publications, in entertainment. The problem is, how do you start with a movement and try to transform into a party versus a vanguard approach? Well, maybe not the word versus is not correct. Some people sit in a room, make a manifesto, make a 10-point program, 2 people, and move to build a party and jump over phases. I mean, Garrow, in his criticism of the Panther Party narrative and literature, argues that there's no precise timeline. They're talking about one period in history and you think it's another period in history. So we've been struggling to try to do research. I speak as a participant observer, but I'm not content just to use my memory, which more and more and more every day as I grow older and grow older is being challenged. Let's start June 10th, 1964, at a SNCC executive staff meeting. Because people have this notion that many of what we've done or will do is spontaneous, shooting from the lip and the hip, and not planned a year, 2 years in advance. June 10, on the launch 64, on the launch of the Mississippi Freedom Summer Project, SNCC had an executive committee meeting at Gammon Theological Seminary in Atlanta. Jim Foreman, Bob Moses, and the research director, I forgot his name, a senior moment. The brother, white dude who was head of SNCC's research committee. They began a proposal called the Black Belt Summer Project of 1965. Here you are in June of 64, discussing what SNCC will do in the summer of 65. The training program in Oxford, Ohio, didn't start until the 13th. Somewhere around that same time period, I don't have my notes right in front of me, the 3 civil rights workers were killed. A bloody summer project of 64, fighting for the right to vote in Mississippi, fighting for the right to participate inside the Democratic Party. We won't try to give that history of Mississippi Summer Project of 64 tonight. I have problems with its incompleteness and its bias, depending upon who you listen to. But here again, June 10, 64, a proposal is submitted to organize freedom organizations in 650 counties in the Black Belt South, from the Tidewater of Virginia to eastern Texas. This is 1964 when we did not have the right to vote. This is 1964 when there was no Voting Rights Act. This is a period in time where building independent and progressive political parties was extremely difficult, extremely difficult. Going back to the various left parties of the 1920s and 30s, I mean, there's a tradition of independent political parties and independent political candidates, going back to Frederick Douglass of 1848 and 1852, coming all the way through the Garveyite Party in the 1920s and 30s, and the Freedom Now Party in New York and in Detroit. It's a whole history to this that people either don't know or are deliberately ignoring. Deliberately ignoring. This would have been a major, major, major push forward. I mean, here you have an independent political party outside the Democratic Party, still inside the system, still discussing reform, but independent of the Democratic Party, independent of the existing structure, with people who weren't eligible or registered to vote. MFDP, Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, had more than 80,000 members in the summer of '64. Lyndon Baines Johnson only got 52,000 votes in the November election. Who's talking about that? Mississippi has been voting Republican since that point in time. The leftist organizations, I mean, we can take the statistics of the votes in the Green Party, the Communist Party, the Socialist Workers Party, the Workers' World Party. We can take their votes down to black precincts and show how much work has been done, how much money has been spent, how much leaflets. I mean, I'm an organizer. The words are important, but the deed is equally, if not more important. The Black Belt Summer Project was sabotaged. In the September SNCC meeting, the October meeting, and the November meeting in Waveland, Mississippi. It was sabotaged for many reasons, good and bad. Frank Smith, congressman here in Washington, D.C., Lance Guillard, and other people raised maybe what was perhaps legitimate objections. Frank, I think, raised the question of who made the decision that the leadership of SNCC cannot speak solely for the staff of SNCC, and they had to have more discussion about this project and whatnot. Guillard raised the question of how do you siphon resources off of Mississippi. Again, this is before the actual launch of Mississippi Freedom Summer Project. Long story short, Jack Menace is the researcher's name. He continued to do research. I mean, the proposal was tabled, to do it shortly. We got details, we got minutes of meetings, we got tape recordings, we got FBI documents, we got Chicago Police Department documents, we got documents, because we don't just want to go from memory. Long story short, the issue was tabled until February of 1965 at another SNCC staff meeting in Atlanta, Georgia. Kwame and Jack Menace and other people did not accept the tabling, the sabotage of that. So they worked all fall, all summer to refine the project and submit it again. Moving very quickly again at the February SNCC meeting, February of '65, Kwame and the forces who agreed with him were given permission to go to Alabama to start. It moved from a Black Belt Summer Project with 650 counties down to an Alabama project, which started out 20 counties, went down to 10 when Hosea Williams got some money from the Attorney General, Richard Flowers, because George Wallace could not run for re-election, so he put his wife Lurleen up to run, and Dickie Flowers wanted to run as the liberal candidate, and he gave some money to Hosea Williams to bring Martin Luther King into Alabama to go through 10 counties in Alabama to tell our people that they should not vote for a black political party. Jeffries and Bloody Lowndes talks about that in a little bit in his book, and that's probably one of the best books I have seen on that period and that time. Long story short, by the summer, one person, Kwame Ture, rolls into Alabama. Shortly, 4 people rolled into Lowndes County. By summer, there are 35 staff members of SNCC working in 5 or 10 counties in Alabama to build the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, the Greene County. It was 5 or 10 counties. Yet in the history, you only hear about Lowndes. You don't hear about the other forces. People claim incorrectly that the Black Panther Party was founded in Oakland, California. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was founded in Oakland, California, October 16th or 22nd of 1966, depending upon what Bobby Seale says today. He the one told us October 16th. 2 years ago or 3 years ago at Morehouse College, when we had a debate with him, me and Kathleen, he changed it to October 22nd. Okay, let them deal with that. The party borrowed a logo from Clark Atlanta University, football team and whatnot, the Black Panther. There's a history of that logo going back to Patton's Black Panthers that liberated some of the concentration camps, the Jewish people from the concentration camps, that the tank brigades that helped roll through Europe to decimate the Nazi regimes. They were called the Patton's Black Panthers. That's a whole history to how that logo has been used by armies, by parties, left and right. The Black Panther Party was called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization and the various other counties. But a New York Times reporter came into Alabama in December of 65 and did an interview with Kwame and saw that the people had adopted the logo, and the New York Times called it the Black Panther Party from December 65, and it stuck. The Nation of Islam never called themselves Black Muslims. It is the New York Times, and one of the TV reporters, the one that did the film The Hate That Hate Produced, who nicknamed them the Black Muslims, and it has stuck. So here you have an effort to build the party in 10 or 20 counties in Alabama, roughly between February 65 and, depending upon how you date it, November of 66, November 8th, I think it was, the election, although the party continued until it was merged into the Democratic Party, John Cashin's party. And then it was co-opted and merged into the Democratic Party. So there's a history to that, which I call the first litter of Black Panther movement parties. The second litter of Black movement Panther started in around June of 1965, when Ed Strickland, with the Alabama Sovereignty Commission, said that an informant in Lowndes County and in SNCC told him that Kwame Ture Stokely Carmichael had made a statement that he was going north into the major northern cities, Detroit, New York, Philadelphia, DC, Chicago, Watts, LA, and he was going to recruit the toughest Negroes in those urban cities with guns to come to Alabama in 66 to volunteer as poll watchers to help the Lowndes County and other freedom organizations and to protect the people against the Ku Klux Klan. And Ed Strickland said, if Kwame Ture bring the toughest Negroes from the North with guns, there is going to be violence in Alabama in November 8, 66. Well, 30 volunteers from the North came to Alabama to work as poll watchers and to work as marshals to protect the people from the Ku Klux Klan. And that ain't even counting the Deacons for Defense and Justice who rolled people in with guns during the election in November of 66. You had, for example, Mark Comfort and Terry Cannon, who was the Friends of SNCC movement in the Bay Area, who predate Huey. They rolled in from Oakland and San Francisco, California, with other forces as part of that 30 volunteers. And when Mark went back to California, he took the information to Huey and Bobby and the rest of the movement in California. A man named Monroe Sharp, who was the director of the SNCC office in Chicago in 1965. And we can give a history of how all that came down. He brought the disciple gangs from Chicago to Alabama. In particular, a man named Bobby Walton, whose African name was Yari Amir. Yari Amir was the number 2 man in the disciple gangs in Chicago. He was in charge of the area between 22nd and 55th Street, Robert Taylor Projects, which is State Street to the lakefront. He was a student at Forestville High School. He was a member of SNCC, and he was the number 2 man in the disciple gang. This is 2 years before Fred Hampton. This speaks about the work that was being done with the so-called gangs in Chicago before the Panther Party. Monroe gave a report to the SNCC Executive All-Staff meeting of September of '66 on the work that this group of people who came to Alabama or were coming to Alabama were doing in Chicago. He said there was an election in the fourth ward in the city of Chicago with Holman, the so-called Silent Six. And he said that they were working with these youth groups in Forestville High School and other schools within that 43rd Street area, and with the gangs. And from that moment, they began to put on their literature. The police department said they went to sleep one night, woke up the next morning, there was a leaflet pasted on the wall saying the Black Panther is coming to Chicago. 2 years before it, in the sense that we know about it, came and whatnot. Yari Amir is a very colorful character. Yari Amir killed a Jordanian grocer on a hit contract June 8th of 1968. And the FBI in Chicago told J. Edgar Hoover and the White House that I planned the hit because I was avenging Siphon killing Robert Kennedy. I got the White House documents. I got it. No, I wasn't in that. Yari had threatened to kill me a couple of times because I wouldn't let them use the money we collected to buy reefer to sell guns. Oh, it's a lot to be told. That is the first litter of Black Panther Party in Chicago. Part of the 4th litter, nationally and internationally. You had, first of all, the proposal. You had, secondly, litter number 1, which was Alabama. You had litter number 2, which was the Friends of SNCC. Mainly in the SNCC had 20 offices, 60 community groups, and more than 100 campus groups at that point in time in the North. You had X number of staff and projects in the South. So litter number 2 was the attempt to get these Friends of SNCC groups, many of whom were white. I mean, in Cincinnati, you had Pete Costin and your father, Leonard Ball. You had Luke Tripp up in Detroit. You have an old man, I forget his name right now, up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And there was a struggle inside of SNCC to convince these various forces, especially the African ones, of the necessity to have an independent political party. And I tell you, it was not easy. It was not easy. So that is the second group, the second litter nationally, the Friends of SNCC. That is the first litter in the city of Chicago with Monroe Sharp and Yari Amir. If Yari had not made the mistake of some of his criminal activity, he probably would have emerged as the Panther in Chicago. Oh yeah, I saw your eyes go up. It's part of the book. I don't know if you remember a man named Anderson Thompson, who was part of, I call it Conrad Worrell's plantation, the Center for Inner City Studies. Conrad was Yari's high school teacher. And when I said that to Andy said, it would have been a mistake. Yeah, it would have been a mistake. Yeah, it may or may not have been.
You mean for him to ascend to the leadership?
For him to ascend to the leadership of the Black Panther Party in Illinois. That is the first letter on the local level. Monroe Sharp was chased out of Chicago by the Democratic Party machine. Starting in June of '66, they began to lay the groundwork, to put leaflets on walls, to put it at the bottom of their letters, 1, 2, 3, to build the climate. He said in his report to the SNCC meeting in September '66 that they were going to move slow, because that was Chicago. And they wanted to make sure that they had a base in the precincts and, before they jumped out there. Well, by December, he was chased out because the SNCC office gave a Christmas party for the youth in the ward and neighborhood, and somebody allegedly smoked some ganja. And he and his wife, Carol Redmond, were chased to Tanzania. And when they loaded the boat with all their personal stuff and the SNCC stuff, the police stole the SNCC contact mailing list as part of the stuff on the boat. I got the FBI report. So that was the end of that first attempt to build the party in Chicago. Yari and the gang kids, they weren't kids, they was same age, a little older than me and whatnot. They continued. A woman named Joyce Brown, no relationship, came to Chicago and took over or began to run the Chicago office of SNCC, which was really the Midwest office, in the year of '67. I know Joyce, I worked with her, I supported her, I carried her son, on my shoulders, in the demonstrations and whatnot. I was in court at that point in time. I'm not really clear on what efforts, whether or not she tried to revive and build the Panther Party in '67. But you had Oscar Brown Jr., who was working with the Blackstone Rangers. You had Muhammad Ali. I mean, there's a whole history, separate and interconnected, of the various movement and community-based organizations who were working with the various youth groups in the city of Chicago. We got the police reports of the meetings, the work of Dr. Reverend Archie Hargraves, who is the one who brought Martin Luther King to Chicago with the Chicago Freedom Movement. Archie, at one point in time, was the godfather to every major gang in the city of Chicago, including the Black Panther Party and whatnot. We met at his house on Sunday morning for breakfast, and the only question was which one of us was going to wash the dishes that day and whatnot. We have minutes of meetings, too much to go into. So there were several attempts. RAM had several attempts to build Black Panther parties in Chicago prior to Fred Hampton. RAM was an underground organization, so you was never really sure, and I still ain't sure today, who was RAM, who was not RAM. But, Muhammad in his dissertation and book, The Whirlwind, he mentions various names of individuals and whatnot who I'm very familiar with and whatnot. And he says they were RAM. And I'm familiar with the work they were doing on the ground, and I'm familiar with some of the conversations that they might have wanted to build a Panther Party. Now we jump up to the one that Fred Hampton and Bob Rush was a member of. Bob Rush in Eyes on the Prize, a 1988 interview that he did with some woman named Terry Rockefeller. I was sitting in the federal penitentiary at the time the interview in '88 went down. Most of the interview was on the cutting room floor. It never made it to the TV. After all the legal and other issues went down, that full transcript, that interview was transcribed. It is now available wherever the Eyes on the Prize archives, one of them universities in Indiana. Question number one from Terry. Tell me about how the Black Panther Party came to Chicago, the one that we are talking about tonight. Bob Rush lied. I mean, he done told a lie so many times in the last 50 years, he done forgot what lie he told, and he just keep lying on top of lie. Yeah, and I invited Bobby to hear us today. He lying. I'm going to correct it. Bobby Rush says that he founded the Panther Party. It's not true. Bobby Rush says he was co-equal to me inside of SNCC. He was a member of SNCC since '66. SNCC had no membership. Thanks to Ella Baker and the tradition of how SCLC was organized and how SNCC was organized. They were staff organizations. SNCC had staff and had friends and it had donors. It also, part of the staff, they had 10 offices in the North, 1 to 2, maybe 3 staff persons per office. I'm the only one who had an official title in the city of Chicago, the director of the Midwest office of SNCC. I got the title very simply. Yari and the Disciple Gangs and the SNCC folks at Forestville High School. And Kenneth Benson, we call him Hippie. We call him the Black Hippie. He was the core cadre at the high school. They had a 4-day rebellion, September of 1967, with the police shooting point blank into the crowd for 4 days. Long story short, Joyce has some personal issues and she chose to leave town. I won't discuss those personal issues. 12 people were thrown in jail as a result of that rebellion, most of them the disciple SNCC youth. Joyce came to my mother's house and said, Bob, I'm leaving town. I'm going back to Atlanta. She told me why and whatnot. She told me, here's the keys to the office. I think it was 3 months behind in rent at that point. She said, here's the bank book. Get in the car, I'll take you to get your name changed. We figured out I could not change the name because I was only 20 years old. And at that point in time, you had to be 21 in order to sign legal documents. But long story short, that is how I became the Midwest director of SNCC, September 1967. And my first assignment was to help raise the money and get the lawyers to bail the folks out of jail. Well, a woman named Georgia, she was then Georgia English. She later became Georgia Palmer, married to Lou Palmer. There was mass arrests with the student movements and the youth movements in the city of Chicago during '67. So Georgia, who had access to all the Black millionaires, and when I mean we call them the Johnson trio, Johnny with Ebony and Jet, and George with the Cadillac, and the other one with the Afro Sheen. We call them the Jones boys. They were dropping money into the movement. So Georgia could just pick up a telephone and say, we need 10,000 cash to bail some people out. She was the founder and the head of the bail bond fund. The American Civil Liberties Union got some money from the Roger Baldwin Foundation to set up what they call a ghetto project. ACLU was providing lawyers to help do the legal work for the movement. And we had so many lawyers. We had mafia lawyers. I mean, come on. That's Chicago. You roll in with Euclid Taylor and you roll in with some of them other ones. You don't even go to trial. You might get to the inquest. He had a history. The moment he was hired to be a lawyer for somebody accused of murder, they were free. The moment he signed his name, they didn't even go to the inquest. He was bad. He was also part of my family lawyer. I knew Euclid from when I was 15. He did some work for us for free. Anyway, you had Georgia, you had Kermit. I was the secretary of the bail bond fund. It was logical. I was of the same generation. I didn't have nothing else to do but go sit up in the courtroom and hear the trials. And when they roll them out of the lockup, I take the names down. You had to at least know the name of who you were coming to bail out, you know. So I'd sit all day, all night long, taking names of the folks rolling into the courthouse. I'd give it to Kermit. He'd do the legal work. You know, we figure out the bail bond. Georgia would call the Jones boy to get the money. I'd go pick it up. I mean, it's a history to this. We bailed them out. We bailed them out. Fred Hampton at the same time was the NAACP youth council in that part of the western suburbs. They say he had 500 members in his posse. That's believable. If you check out the city of Chicago, I don't know that so much about the suburbs. It's southern suburbs I knew, because we had a South Suburban chapter, branch of SNCC headed by a man named Tommy Carter. And they've written him out of history. He don't even hear his name, but he had the whole South suburbs and whatnot. He was the number 2 person in that faction of the Black Panther Party in Chicago. Bob Rush was number 3. I recruited him. Long story, there's a history of how you actually do organizing work on the ground. When you're working in those high schools and in those colleges, you have to know which gang controls the student population. A man named Dan Stern, who helped found, he was the Conrail Warrell of the North Side outpost for Northeastern Illinois. And a man named Jose Lopez, who's the Puerto Rican Cultural Center. His brother was one of the Puerto Rican independence prisoners who was in jail, and I think Clinton. They wrote a book in the 1980s called The Gangs in Chicago. And they listed every major gang down to the block. What police district, what elementary school, what high school, what housing projects. Well, they did scientific academic research with documents, proof. We kind of know it on the ground. You roll up in a school and you do the wrong signal, oop, you got to run. Because you cannot have a major youth movement in the city of Chicago with some overlap with the gangs. At that point in time, there might have been 370,000 Africans in Chicago public school system, give or take some numbers. I'm doing it, freestyle. But anywhere from 30 to 100,000 of them belong to the 4 major gangs. So you kind of knew when you crossed territory, and you kind of knew how to carry yourself. And you had all of these adult organizations, the community groups, the churches. It's too much to go through. Here we go down to March 18. This alleged merger between SNCC and the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Listed number 3 was RAM, the Revolutionary Action Movement. Kwame Ture and Muhammad Ahmed met August 28 in Mount Moriah's church in the Bronx and announced the formation of the New York Black Panther Party with Bill Epton, who was Progressive Labor Party, the black Maoist at that point in time, especially in Harlem, and Muhammad Ahmed, who was field chairman of RAM. Kwame Ture stood on the stage and announced that Muhammad Ahmed was the Minister of Defense of the Black Panther Party in New York City. And in Kwame's speech, which we got, it says it is traditional, whatever the words were, for the first Black Panther Party outside the South to be in Harlem. And Kwame and Muhammad Ahmed and Ivanhoe Donaldson cut a deal.
And what year was this again?
Huh?
What year again was this?
This is 66. This is June, July to August 28, 66, before the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. The deal was very simple. Whatever Ram had cadre and support base across the country, and whatever SNCC had people who would at least agree to build an independent political party. Most of them did not, and they're Democrats tonight. Mm-hmm. Those who ain't Republican and they don't want me to boss them out. We know the politics, and some of them is Green Party, and some of them is Nation Islam, and some of them are Communist Party. I mean, you do research. You do research. Who are your friends, your allies, who are your enemies, and your competitors? And if you got real research, you kind of want to know where they're at right now, in case they're plotting against you. I don't know what this fake, I promised I wouldn't cuss, I almost did. But anyway, it don't make sense. So the letter number 3 with the Ram cadre, it existed formally from August 28, 1966 until May 3, 1967, when Huey's boys, half of whom was really Mark Comfort's. I'm glad I mentioned Mark Clark, but I got the marks mixed up. We talking about Mark Comfort, California. Half of them so-called 30 people who marched with them guns into that California state legislature, they were not Panthers. They were Mark Comfort, with the Oakland Direct Action Committee, which was an affiliate of SNCC in California. But that history ain't really told right. So the next day, the day after that, according to Muhammad Ahmed, he issued an order to all Ram chapters and Ram cadre across the country to liquidate whatever they were doing with the Panther Party. It's in his dissertation book. I don't know if he had a discussion with Kwame before he did that. Usually when you have an alliance, you know, even when you're married and it goes downhill, depending on how bad it goes, you at least say, hi, I'm gone. You know, we won't fight over, you know, you try to do it properly and correctly, if possible, and whatnot. So I don't know if Muhammad did that. Muhammad was correct. It was some ultra-leftist, adventuristic stuff that would bring COINTELPRO down on them. Mm-hmm. And it happened. Ram was crushed during the summer of '67 and whatnot in the first COINTELPRO operations. It was partly Ram was the last one standing in the turkey shoot. Kwame wasn't in the country. So, you know, J. Edgar Hoover wasn't going to roll up in the Conakry, Guinea and play with Secretary. You know, so he got the next one standing. But Jamil was already in jail, probably. You know, so of the 3 top targets, Kwame out the country, Jamil in jail, next one is Muhammad. And the things they did to Muhammad have not been told yet. So Muhammad pulled back from the Black Panther Party, and he can better talk about that than I. Letter number 4 is SNCC and the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, which is the second letter in Chicago. The 66 letter with Monroe was part of the SNCC, the second letter. The first letter locally in Chicago was part of the second letter nationally. The Fred Hampton, Bobby Rush, Bob Brown is part of the 4th letter. Am I losing you with the numbers? 1, 2, 3, 4. Alabama 1, Friends of SNCC 2, Ram is 3, Black Panther Party for Self-Defense is 4. 5 is the International, Obi Egbona Sr. You know Obi here in D.C.? Mm-hmm. His dad founded the Black Panther Party of London, 100% independent of Oakland. There were other stuff that nobody even talks about. So there's at least 5 letters, with the Oakland people being letter number 4. The so-called, let's just call it the Fred Hampton Mark Clark, so that because people can be familiar and won't get lost in the fog of the numbers. That was founded March 18, 1968. And the dates are very important. And there are several different versions. Jeff Haas, in his book, says that Fred Hampton went to the SNCC office and asked Kwame to come to Maywood. How can you come to an office that doesn't exist? I got the FBI reports on the eviction notice on the door. I closed it down because I wasn't safe up in there. If I'm up in there 11 o'clock at night, the gangs break in and I got to run. I used to be a track star. Because when I didn't do what them gangs wanted me to do, I had to run. And the fact that I'm still here tonight is proof I'm a damn good runner. At least I was and was not. How can you go to a SNCC office and ask a door to let Kwame go to Maywood? That's because Jeff did not want to say he went to Bob Brown and asked Bob Brown, could Kwame go to Maywood? That's why. Bob Rush says he did this in his interview. I mean, Bob Rush, he just gets real stupid. But then a month or two later, Kwame did an interview, a second interview for Eyes on the Prize. And Judy Richardson interviewed him. And she kind of told her age, my big sister. She said, and now let's talk about In the Neighborhood with Fred. Well, everybody know we the Mr. Rogers neighborhood generation. You looked at Mr. Rogers while you was getting ready to go to school in the morning and whatnot, finding lost shoes and the homework that the dog ate, all them reasons you didn't want to go off to school. So anyway, she asked Kwame's version. Kwame's version was, this is 1 month after the Free Huey birthday rallies in Oakland, and the one they write out of history because Malala Karenga organized it on February 18th down there. 1 month later, Kwame says Bob Brown called him and said there's a possibility of springing off a pamphlet chapter in Chicago. And we needed him to come to Chicago to help build rallies, do press, help the crowd. So Bob Brown called Kwame Ture. That doesn't mean that Bob Brown founded it. Technically speaking, matters primary. And Kwame came. And he didn't just come for no one event. Doug Andrews, who might have been Ram, was thrown in jail with Fats Crawford of the Deacons for Defense and Justice, accused of organizing the rebellion on the West Side during the King Rebellion. And Georgia and the movement put together a fundraiser, and the fundraiser was headed up by Eartha Kitt and Sammy Davis Jr. And Kwame just happened to come to town because Mary Makeba was performing at Blues for Mr. Kelly. Kwame came to Chicago 3, maybe 4 times during '68. Part of the reason he came was because Makeba was performing, and he traveled with her. And so while she's rehearsing and while she's doing her thing with her band and her network, we put Kwame on the road. Speaking engagements, 1, 2, 3, 4. So anyway, long story short, Fred Hampton, we gave him 1 hour. We told him, if you can put this together, this is the only free block of time. If you can put this together in this time out in Maywood, I'll deliver Kwame. In the interview, Kwame said he didn't want to go. He says Bob Brown made a mistake recruiting somebody from the NAACP. Now, didn't have no, Kwame said that in 88. He died in 98. I ain't arguing with Kwame on that one. Because, he would have had to whoop my ass, excuse my language.
You're fine.
Julian Bond was, when Julian Bond was born, he was lifetime membership of the NAACP. That's why he'd go back and become chairman. SNCC and SCLC was split off from the NAACP. So how can you tell me it's wrong for us to organize with the NAACP in Chicago, and that's what y'all did in the South? All them old men in Mississippi was NAACP.
That's right.
Wasn't no mystery that Ella Baker could found SNCC and could do so much. Ella Baker was the membership director of SNCC in the NAACP in the 40s and the 50s. She knew all them chapters. And she knew all them old women and them old men who were advisors for the NAACP Youth Council. Same in Chicago. Every high school had a gang. Some of them had movement, one or two people, student for years. For 4 years, I was the only, no, it was 3 of us at Market Boy High School. A white woman named Natasha. I don't know where she at today. Another woman named Christina May, we called her Chuckles. She was a graphic artist. Chuckles and I integrated the high school newspaper. I got quickly purged because I did scathing research and articles, I mean scathing. So they said, no, he gotta go. He can't be on our newspaper. Chuckles became the Minister of Culture for the Black Panther Party of Illinois. People don't know where that First Central Committee came from. Kwame said he didn't want to go, that I shouldn't raid another organization. I didn't argue with Kwame about that. You organize Mississippi, this Chicago. There are more people them or their families born in Mississippi in Chicago tonight than there is in Mississippi. And you don't play with these gangsters up here. Because they're gangsters. Al Capone's town. And even there were black gangsters, the Jones boys and Ted Rowe with the policy machine. You don't connect them to Jeff Fort and Larry Hoover. Malcolm X talks about Bumpy and his connection as a policy writer in New York, but somehow nobody talks about those historical generational connections in Chicago and how you have to maneuver through them, manipulate them. Let me move fast. Long story short, between March 18th of 68, I resigned. And it was no one resignation, no process. I resigned December 68, latest February of 69. I was gone. The Panther Party did several purges in 69. The first purge of January of 69, David Hilliard, who was in charge, said they were purging jackanapes. But how the hell do you purge jackanapes in Chicago and the Minister of Defense, or whatever his title was, is the FBI and the local police? How does O'Neill purge jackanapes? How does the police purge gangsters in the party? And there were. But it was also an ideological purge. California, David Hilliard, Charles Garrett flew in to Chicago to get Earl the Squirrel out of jail. Minister of Education, he was drunk on an airplane over Chicago, saying if this airplane can take me to California, it can take me to Cuba. They took him off that plane and put him in Cook County. And he made his one phone call to California to get a lawyer. And the rest of it is really a Marvel comic Walt Disney version of what went down. But long story short, David Hilliard and Charles Gary rolled into town, had a secret meeting with Fred Hampton and Bob Rush, and said, if you want to be formally recognized as a Panther, you must renounce nationalism and you must declare yourself a Marxist-Leninist. I wasn't invited to the meeting. I found out decades later. You know, none of the faction who came except Bobby Rush. I accidentally walk into the Panther office in Chicago, and that's a whole comedy discussion. And I walk into a press conference with Fred and the Guardian newspaper. And I don't remember the person, but it might have been Carl Davidson giving the interview. And Fred Hampton said he made a mistake. California corrected his mistake. He renounced nationalism. And then he said, I now declare myself a Marxist-Leninist. So I slid in the office, made sure I wasn't on camera. I went to the telephone. I called Ishmael Flores, who was the chairperson of the Communist Party of Illinois, who gave me my first Marxist book in 1964, 4 years before this incident. I don't know how many times Ishmael promised me all expenses paid trips to Russia, to Eastern Europe. I should have took them. I ain't got there yet. I should have took those trips, but that's another story. I told Ishmael, y'all have won. Y'all's network has taken control of the Panther Party in Illinois. Now, would you please send Bob Rhodes or somebody over here with some Marxist books to teach these people how to spell Marx? It's true.
Hey, just real quick, let me just, while you mentioned his name, I want to, no, there's no need to stop. I just want to quickly let folks know that they can go to our mixwithilike.org and hear some of Bob Rhodes' final discussions of global politics and economics, which are fascinating. But anyway, no, I didn't. I just wanted to interject that quick plug.
And Bob Rhodes worked with Leonard Ball.
He did. They did.
Very closely.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, when I got through talking to Ishmael, I went to Bob Rush. I said, Bob, I'm not renouncing nationalism. We had an agreement. We worked together because we were trying to build, we say we were nationalists. Okay, you're moving toward Marxist-Leninism, and you see how long that lasted with Bob. Is Bob a Marxist-Leninist tonight? Number 23 on the seniority list in Congress? I don't think so. And I don't think he was then either. But he had a right. What people forget or don't know was that we were already moving toward Nkrumahism, Touré-ism. August of 1967, when Kwame met Secretary Ray and Kwame Nkrumah and Mary McCabe and Shirley Graham, Du Bois, and the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania people in Conakry, and was given the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, we had already made, as of that moment, historically, to move to study Nkrumah as Secretary Ray, move to becoming Nkrumah's Touréist. We had already said we will study the question of how to build an all-African People's Revolutionary Party and an all-African Committee of Political Coordination. And if things had worked out, the Black Panther Party of the United States might have been the U.S. branch of the All-African Committee of Political Coordination, and there would not have been no reason for Bob Brown to work 50 more years. trying to build the AAPRP. Now, nobody has said that before. That gonna start a war worldwide.
Why is that? Why
Because
do you think it hasn't been stated, and why do you think it's going to start this global
because it
worldwide
wasn't possible, and there was no need at that point in time saying something that couldn't happen. And I wasn't part of the discussion at that level, but Kwame and Ethel Minor and the forces he discussed with, who were the national SNCC, made that, and the people in Conakry, Guinea, made that strategic and tactical decision. I mean, if you read Kwame's resignation letter dated July 3rd, 1969, he was in Guinea. He didn't come into the country in 69 at all. When he left December 17, 68, he didn't come back in the country till March of 1970. He said that resignation letter was brought into the country, into the U.S. by Miriam Makeba. Ethel and Makeba rolled into New York to the JFK airport, what it was called then, had a press conference already planned. David Lorenz, who was a friend of SNCC out of Chicago, and also with, I think, Negro Digest, it was called. I don't know if it had become Black World by then. Anyway, Kwame's resignation was printed in Jet magazine, thanks to Ethel and Dave. And then Makeba went and got on the airplane, went on back out the country, and Ethel came down, and we had our meeting. We were waiting for Ethel to come back. We had all resigned or were purged in February, March, certainly by April. We sent Ethel to Conakry to give a report to Kwame and frankly tell him to resign. He did it reluctantly. He thought he could do something, to move it. If things had worked out, the Black Liberation Army might have been part of the All-African People's Revolutionary Army, which would be all the guerrilla groups that would align themselves with. But there's a whole series of reasons, including what I call the COINTELPRO of the left. I saw your eye go up on that one. I don't think you heard of that one before. And the
I'm happy to have you elaborate.
The things that Moscow did to us. The things that Peking did to us. The things we tried to do with forces around the world, governmental forces. That has not been written. And one of the reasons that it cannot be written is because Africans are happy to be Afro-American. They can't see nothing outside of Europe.
Wouldn't it also require some sort of
research?
Well, not just that, but also some agreement or participation with those respective governments. I mean, they would have to be willing to turn over some documents, right?
Yeah. The word willing, I mean, it first of all presupposes we don't have documents.
Okay.
And secondly, presupposes we don't have memory.
Well, but I mean, just the way, the memory and the I guess undocumented or unsubstantiated stories that existed, or beliefs that experiences that existed in the United States before the COINTELPRO papers were revealed. I'm assuming there would have to be some sort of similar international COINTELPRO paper revelation or dump, right?
There are all kinds of archival material. The different political organizations have newspapers. They have theoretical journals. You may not have access to the minutes of their meeting, but if you read Henry Winston's book on Black strategy, which was 1970-71, where he denounced Neo-Pan-Africanism and Neo-Garveyism, you don't have to read the Commentary on Black Belt 1928. You should.
No, but I'm sorry. Maybe I'm missing. Well, I know I'm missing a bunch.
The documentation exists, not evenly accessible across to all the scholars. You can't imagine how many people want me to give up my stuff and drop dead so they can do what they want to do with it.
No, what?
That's another story. Let's.
No, but in terms of these COINTELPRO of the left that you're talking about because you're right. We've only really focused on, to the extent we have, what the COINTELPRO of the United States did. But you're now saying we haven't, and I think you're making a great point. We haven't done enough to investigate what other states were doing to the movement as well. And because a lot of us are maybe fancifully assuming that relative to the United States, that China and the Soviet Union were not COINTELPROing the movement. You know, when we think of Robert Williams going to China or something like that, we're maybe I'll speak for myself. Maybe I got caught up in that and didn't think to what extent was China. You're suggesting China had a similar counterintelligence program against those revolutionary movements,
against and for.
Right.
Let's be dialectical. Against and for.
Right.
And at different points in history, different forces might be predominantly for. All you got to do is be 51%. Either way. You shift 2 percentage points, and it shifts to the different sides of the equation. I mean, have you ever thought about how the Red Book gets to Oakland, California?
A lot, actually.
Let me take it further. How a Japanese man, Aoki, gives the first guns. That's what Bobby Seale said with that Ramparts. Ramparts magazine wrote most of them original books.
Oh, wow.
You haven't read the acknowledgement page? They get a retreat. The Rampart staff and editors get a retreat. They invite the boys. They get a fifth. They put the microphone in front of you and they transcribe. That's how a lot of them books, memoirs. You don't need no footnotes. You just talk. And that's how they say it, not how I say it. I can quote them. And then the rival book publisher gets a rival gang or movement and then publishes their book. There's at least 2 doctoral dissertations on how the Red Book got around the world and how it got into the United States at a point in time when all socialist communist literature was banned by the Treasury Department, the Post Office. There's a whole history about the deals that were cut between the Chinese government and the US government to get the bookstore open, to allow the book to be imported, to allow the book to be purchased. There's a whole Supreme Court case law of freedom of information, freedom for the right for banned literature to be distributed in this country and from other countries around the world. So they really had no choice, because the movement since the 20s and 30s had fought over access to culture, to literature, from all of these so-called proscribed countries. The fight the communists and nationalists can't teach on college campuses. It's a whole history to that. And it continues today with determining what somebody can say or teach on campus about Israel and Palestine. It's simply a version of it. And they know they're going to lose it unless they stack the court, because the laws, the precedents of that. But let's just do this one. A Japanese man brings the first guns to Huey and Bobby. And 3 or 4 decades later, we find out he working for the FBI. And most of them still can't believe it, despite all the literature out there. Now, just follow it. A Japanese gun runner,
Richard Aoki,
agent of the FBI in the movement on the West Coast, one of the first field marshals underground of the Black Panther Party, tells them to go to the China bookstore, get the red book, I think it was 10 cents a book, go up on Berkeley, sell it at $1 to buy more guns. At the moment, millions of Chinese are in the streets. That's a movie by itself. Don't you think?
I think there are a lot of movies in what you've been talking about here today. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me cap that one off. Judas and the Black Messiah. And I don't know why it ain't, if it had to be done, I don't know why it ain't Messiah and Judas. At least change the name around. I don't want to get off on that one. Have you did the political economy of the distribution of stuff? It wound up, because of the pandemic, for the most part, launched on HBO. HBO is owned by AT&T. I have not been able to get the information on how much money was made. If you had a $15 a month scholarship, you could see, subscription, you could see the movie for free. But they mounted a massive worldwide campaign to sell more HBO subscriptions on the basis of that movie. I'm gonna leave this one. I'm gonna say something, but I'm gonna walk past that one. that gets too low down. But anyway, Warner Brothers has a history of these police flicks. It's a genre. Have you ever wondered why every Panther movie, the snitch is the hero? Going back to Melvin Van Peebles, and the snitch is always the hero, portrayed as the one who builds the party. I like the word snitch, better not do the word informer. There's a class reality to informants, and a good bad. A whistleblower is an informant. Good, because they talk about corruption, they talk about injury, they talk about danger, they're helping on part of the people. How you get in the back room to know about it? How long are you in the back room watching all this evil, committing some, and then for whatever reasons, good or bad, you just decide to blow the whistle? A whistleblower is also upper class. You ain't gonna see no poor white person down there in Appalachia. get no 30% for blowing the whistle on the coal miner. There are class issues with respect to that. So Warner Brothers has a history of that. Have you ever wondered, maybe one of your students could do a research paper, how many Indians were killed in the Warner Brothers movies?
We actually did a couple of semesters ago in a class I was teaching on violence in film. We actually did. It wasn't that level of detail, unfortunately, but we did an assessment of that year's films and the violence, on-screen violence, and who suffered the violence. And I don't have it in front of me, but overwhelmingly, the victims were always so-called people of color.
Yeah.
And overwhelmingly, when we also did a little bit of a class look too, and overwhelmingly, it was poor people. So you rarely saw, even in films that were supposed to be about so-called slave rebellions, you rarely even saw on-screen violence against the white slave owners. Even in a film like Nat Turner, most of the violence on screen was suffered by black people. But anyway, so yeah, but I think you raise another good point. Yeah, go ahead.
Warner Brothers, because of the pandemic, they had to delay the release of the movie because the movie theaters couldn't open. And I'm trying to find out how much of the stimulus checks did the movie theaters get and where they're located, because they're not in the, I don't think there's too many movie theaters in the ghetto in Chicago. You have to run to get into the movie theater. You'd be worried about if you're gonna get shot while you're eating your popcorn. Damn sure you'd have to run on the way out. So they all kind of, and I'm not trying to be negative, but there ain't that many movie theaters in our neighborhood. There ain't that many movie theaters in Africa. The Marvel Comics Walt Disney movie was shown in 4,000 movie theaters in the US. They even reopened movie theaters in Saudi Arabia that had been closed for decades, because of the fundamentalist Islamic position on entertainment and whatnot. And that's when it's wide open. And those 4,000 movie theaters in the US and the theaters around the world grossed $1.3 billion in the box office. I don't know what they grossed on the t-shirt sales and the Wakanda cups and it was a multi-billion-dollar business. This one cost $26 million to produce, and they had to dance. They had to dance to get that $26 million. And I think 13 million of it came from one African. So really the white folks only put up 13 million. Plus, what I'm not anti-white, but come on, this is the money green. It's got a color to it. This movie cost $26 million to produce. It grossed $5 million last time I looked at Wikipedia. It grossed $5 million at the box office.
Yeah, worldwide, I'm looking at it says about 6.5 million.
Okay.
Box office. Mm-hmm.
That's just the box office.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the box office was 1,888 in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that many box office, wasn't that many countries, and wasn't that many box office outside
right.
the US. Most of the theaters in the US are AMC.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever done any research on AMC?
I sure have.
It's part of it is the second, maybe the second or third. I don't think it's the first. It might be the first part of the largest movie conglomerate in the world. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And at one point, did it merge with Lowe's? I'm trying to look that up. Did they merge with Lowe's theater chain?
They merged with a bunch of them. I think.
Oh yeah. The many theaters were, yeah, they did. And because at one point, they were also bought up by, I remember when Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11 came out, United Corporation bought up the chain because they owned, that was Bush Senior's, he was a member of that organization that was also one of the biggest weapons manufacturers, and they bought up the chain so that they could block distribution of that film.
Let me make you laugh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All about propaganda.
If I remember correctly, and my memory is going, the 12,000 movie theaters worldwide in that network.
Mm-hmm.
Only 1,888 showed the film for whatever reasons, and they're going to explain that to me. But there's a group called Wanda Group, which is the second largest group in China. It makes its money off of housing and development and whatnot. It has diversified it has diversified into other stuff. So they are one of the top 3 owners of movie theaters in China. They don't have majority stock, but they have majority vote and control over this network, Wanda Group. The president, CEO of Wanda Group, his son spends millions of dollars on birthday parties for himself. And he's Chinese hip hop. The man's daddy fought in the caves with Mao. He is a member of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party today. He was 12 years old when Huey and Bobby were selling Red books in the Bay Area. When he got older, he went to some Ivy League school up in Northeast. Don't you think it kind of strange? No, not necessarily strange in a negative way. Coincidental. 2 or 3 generations later, the Chinese is pushing the movie. I emailed the old man. He's younger than me. He was 12 in 66. I was 18, so he's younger than me. I emailed him. And I thanked him and his company for bringing Fred Hampton back alive. Even though I have problems with the narrative, even though I'm upset that not enough was said about Mark Clark. And Bobby Rush looked like some little puppy dog rolling behind. Most of the people I know don't even know Bobby was in the movie.
Yeah, I had missed it initially too. Yeah.
That just shows you how downplayed his character was. He was a Panther before Fred Hampton. I'm just saying. So anyway, I thank the man for doing that. And I said, do you know that we the ones sold that Red book? Not the only ones, maybe not the predominant. I How do you get a gangster in Chicago who was pushed out of and dropped out of high school or elementary school at 13, at 16, who knows how to take a gun up and down and round, blah, 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 and don't want to read the instructions? How do you get that person to stand at attention for hours and recite the Red Book by memory? We were part of the Sino-Soviet War. It comes at a moment when the Sino-Soviet split heats up. And when China makes a decision to be more upfront about pushing Maoism worldwide. When you look at the legal, political productions, the distribution statistics, in 1964, they make a decision to translate some of Mao's writings into Chinese in a particular dialect to produce one book for every soldier. You had your weapon, you had your kit, you had your Mao book. And how they had to build printing presses. And I mean, the logistical question of how do you produce 1 million books? And it was only the army. By 66, the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party, with Mao pushing it, decides to produce another 1 million for the students. And China and Mao Zedong greets them and encourages them and sicks them. The class struggle. So now you got a whole another logistical operations to produce, translate, produce, and distribute, and put the Red Guard in the streets. And then you make a decision to translate it into all these other languages and move it to bookstores in countries throughout the world. And you encourage the formation of Maoist political parties. What good is Maoist ideology without a Maoist political party?
Pretty good.
At the very least, Nkrumah's correct thought without practice is empty. So there's a history to this. And then Secretary Kwame Nkrumah comes out with a book. He got a handbook. They got a red book. Use your plagiarism checker. Put them two books side by side on your computer. And ask the question, which one was published first? And then who borrowed what from whom?
Wait, which two? You talking about the
Nkrumah's handbook
and book for
and Mao
Revolution?
Zedong's red book. I'm an Nkrumah's Tereus, but I kind of think I know where Nkrumah got some of that stuff from.
Don't forget Gaddafi.
Put the Nation of Islam's what we want, what we believe, side by side with Kwame Ture's September 22nd, 1966, New York Times, What SNCC Wants. And in October 16th, 10-point program. Put them three documents and do the plagiarism checker. And as a professor, you got one. Or you should have one. Your students should have one, so they should catch the plagiarism shit before they hand you, excuse my language, before they hand you the paper. I'm using it. I've coined a new verb. It's called Pineal. I thought
See,
you'd like
man,
that.
this is twice in this interview. You've raised two things that you said you didn't want me to ask about, and so that's why I'm just laughing. I just think that's funny. But real quick, before you explain that, and I do want you to explain that.
Why? But go ahead.
Because I want you to, but the books you were just saying, the last three books you were saying that we should line up. You say that the Nation of Islam's
What We Want, What We Believe,
right?
that they published on the back page of the Muhammad Speaks,
right?
And they get slick when they sell you a week-old newspaper. They wouldn't show you the front page; they show you the back page.
That's right.
And you didn't know you had a week-old, month-old copy until they gone, and you open them and say, "I'll be blank." That one, take the original one, and then put Kwame Ture did a speech, a paper, SNCC, was published September 22nd, 1966, the New York Times Review. And it was called What SNCC Wants. And then October 16th, 1966, Panther 10-point program. Hopefully somebody on listening, one of these students out here, one of these old folk like me trying to catch up with technology and whatnot, just take those three documents and put them in the plagiarism checker and see how it was, whether it was properly cited, whether it was properly summarized, whether words, you don't just play, you create words. I call it Penialism. I did it on his book. I had nothing but an Excel spreadsheet. I had all that technology. I'm doing it for the Panther book. A man named Dr. Christian Davenport up at Ann Arbor and some of his buddies, they have coined something called academic genealogy. And they were doing it manual. Basically, what they would do is they would get an author and they would look at the dissertation committee, the chairperson, the members. Or they would go to the acknowledgement section of the book and see who you acknowledge. Or they go to the interview section. That's how I caught somebody. I won't mention the name a third time.
Well, I will, because when and I want selfishly, I want somebody to clip this part of the interview and send it to Aaron Mate, because when I said to Aaron Mate, you interviewing Peniel Joseph about Kwame Ture would be like me interviewing Rachel Maddow about Russiagate. His response was to say, well, Gerald Horne positively blurbed his book, so I trust Gerald Horne. Well, now, so I want everybody to clip this and show where I'm saying, talking to Bob Brown, and Bob Brown is saying, Peniel has been, you've coined a whole term for him. He's well,
let me not talk about the individual. Let me talk about the behavior.
That was just my selfish.
I'm gonna help you. I was late, so I couldn't do what I wanted to do, and we over an hour, so it'll work itself out. I gave somebody some interviews. You don't call me at 3 o'clock in the morning and think I ain't having a party. You call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I might say anything. And might not remember it. It's a fact. So it's a question of how the interview goes down. When I tell you, okay, there are certain things I'm not going to talk about. How many kids does Kwame have? Ask Kwame. His mother deliberately built a bench next to his gravesite. So if you have any issues or you won't know anything, take your blank over there, sit and spend the day with Kwame. Mm. We went around. How do you out 6 women? Because your publisher, who's here, Lewis Gates, tells you the book as it is currently written is too soft on Kwame. You gotta put some more stuff in there. So you just toss some shit in that may or may not have any context. But he's talking about. I said this statement that Kwame Ture at Bronx High School danced like Fred Astaire. Why couldn't you say there are all kind of black dancers in the 50s? Why Fred Astaire? Because you appealing to some 80, 90-year-old gay person?
Oh, I was going to say white people. He wanted that big white audience, and they don't know who. They don't know who.
Yes.
You know the Nicholas brothers are.
And folks, when he danced in Harlem and he dancing on white side of town, and they call him a fag on this side of town, and blah blah blah. Why you put that in there? Because you appealing to an audience, which is okay. Okay, appeal to it. But don't pimp me in the process. Mm. We go further. Kwame's misogynist, and let me get real good. And Kwame made this statement: the only position of women is Snickers prone. Use common sense. What was Fannie Lou Hamer's position in SNCC? What was Ella Baker's position in SNCC? Ethel Minor clarified hers when folks pimped her, played her. She quickly clarified it. So even if he said that only,
it was a joke.
Are we just talking about what he said? Or are we concerned about what was the factual, real position of women in SNCC? How it's something called diffusion. How a rebellion starts in this little area, or a gossip starts in this little area, and how does it move, diffuse itself around the world? What the hell is a college student, SNCC, in November of 1964, right after Bloody Summer Project, right after the election, where Johnson only got 52,000 votes in Mississippi and Goldwater got 370-some thousand, and 500 FBI agents and the CIA. This is a war zone. And here is some SNCC youth have an all-night beach party. Now that's kind of not my class. I ain't went no beach parties in Chicago. This just ain't my class reality. It ain't my, no. But what the hell is an all-white college beach party in the middle of a wall, smoking reefer and drinking wine? and somebody a clown, Kwame clowning. You know, he told jokes. He make you laugh, right or wrong, the content of the joke. He clowning. And you take this, Mary King says it was a joke. A bunch of them. Even some of the women who were offended when they first heard it, some of the African women, when they first heard it. But how does that incident, how do you want to characterize it? It didn't go public for 4 or 5 years. Until Gloria Steinem called Mary King and said, is it true Kwame said that? And then Gloria Steinem put it in Ms. Magazine or wherever else she put it, and it went all around the world. Gloria Steinem, CIA. She admits it.
She's proud of it. She's proud of it. She says she was helping change the culture of the state.
Yes. And I have not said that because it's standard, it's protocol, it's correct that you don't attack the woman because the victim of rape or whatever, you don't attack them as part of the so-called defense. You know, you don't out them. You don't mention their name unless they want to. So why in that damn book is the name of 6 women outed? Dog Kwame, do whatever you want. He can take care of himself. He can take care of himself, even now. But you are talking about his errors. How will you defend this one? Did you talk to them women? Did you ask them permission to use their name? Don't you have an ethical, moral responsibility as a so-called academician?
The man didn't even reference Teray's own autobiography. How do you write a biography about someone that doesn't even reference their own autobiography, even if you want to disparage it? How do you do that and claim it?
Because you would have to put footnotes in your book, at least one per paragraph. I told you I did a content analysis.
Mm-hmm. And you would also have to deal with Kwame Ture after 1970, which Peniel didn't want to do because he wanted to create a narrative in that book that Ture lost his significance and his importance.
But
and it's probably as much now, if not more than ever. But
let's jump that one.
Mm-hmm.
Peniel told me that Henry Louis Gates told him to put that in there. If Henry listened, I could be wrong, but if Henry listened, I've seen it in his stuff. Did W.B. Du Bois lose his significance in 1959 when he left the country? Does Eldridge Cleaver, does Huey P. Newton, does James Baldwin, does Richard Wright, does Bricktop, does entertainers, political forces, do they lose their significance because they left the country? How the hell can you be Du Bois Institute at Harvard when Du Bois left the country?
No, yeah, there's no logic other than, Joseph's clear design in the book is to, as he said, when Ture was doing Black civil rights, American democracy, and tried to radically transform American democracy, when he was doing voting rights drives and stuff like that, that's when he was relevant, when he became more associated with Nkrumahism, Toureism, and AAPRP, and scientific socialism, and Pan-Africanism, and guerrilla warfare and armed struggle. That's when he lost his relevance and lost his
okay.
Yeah, so that's why he has to paint that narrative. And anyone can see, by the way, Peniel in video dialogue with Henry Louis Gates in presentation at Harvard, where Gates becomes extremely animated and hostile at any notion that Kwame Ture would be well remembered at this point in our history. So I mean, it's what you're describing. If there's no actual way to prove that Gates did that, I think the influence of Gates's perspective is in Joseph's
I can
work.
prove it. I sued Peniel and Gates. I knew I was going to lose. The White House couldn't stop the New York Times from printing the Pentagon Papers because there's no prior restraint. So how can I sue Basic Civitas Press, which is owned by Henry Louis Gates, CIA publishing house? I can document it. It was in my lawsuit. You know what I'm saying? I know why. Soros. Georgie. Finances Peniel. Peniel has a deal. Every 2 years, set up a new democracy center, institute, whatever. His first budget was at Tufts. He got a couple $100,000, I forget the exact amount, to set up that center. That book was written under that umbrella. And Harvard. He was given a 1-year sabbatical to finish the book at Harvard. I can document. George Soros, among other things, it might be an ongoing war. The biggest, richest iron mine in the world is in Guinea. And there has been a 20-year or more war between George Soros and Benny Steinmetz in Israel for control of the mine. Benny Steinmetz bought the mine because the old man, the old general who pulled the coup d'etat after Secretary Ray died in Cleveland, a so-called bloodless coup, and quite a few male members of Secretary Ray's family, not to mention members of the Central Committee, were killed. That old man had 4 wives. He was on his deathbed. The youngest wife took a $50,000 bribe to sell the mine to Benny Steinmetz, the richest family in Israel. And that 4th wife wound up being state's witness, an O'Neill. I got me another word, O'Neill does.
They
And
O'Neill.
long story short, some of Benny's boys was pressing license plates in penitentiaries. And the FBI rolling all over Guinea because of the corruption. But then George Soros gives some money to put the current president of Guinea in office. And he financed a committee to study corruption in the mining industry. And he used the proof of corruption in the mining industry to do some more corruption. So I think maybe he now owns the mine.
Wow.
That's the one financing democracy centers. He was the one financing the coup d'etat against Mugabe, the Orange Revolution, George Soros. If you go on the internet, you find out all the people who were on the open source or open somebody foundation, George Soros' foundation. You go on that, you will see a who's who of the movement, of the so-called left, including Pacifica Foundation. I won't name no names. Now, they can take the money, but they just don't need, lesser of evils. They can give me all the reasons in the world, but it ain't right. When I give you an interview off the record, I'm on the record here, but 3 o'clock in the morning, whenever I call you, you call me, and we just shooting the breeze, and I'm just helping you because you say you're honest and you say you're going to do a book on Kwame. Okay, I should try to help you, but I got tricked. And then in the book, you say telephone interview. And you put me with the other people that you say you did telephone interviews with. Yes, it was on the telephone. There's no doubt about that. But ordinarily to me, that means I gave you approval.
Mm.
You didn't say off the record. You want to make it look like I approved the interview, and that's wiretapping. It's wiretapping. And if I really wanted to be correct, his ass will still be pressing license plates in a penitentiary in Massachusetts or North Carolina or DC, depending upon where he was at.
Yeah, well, right. If he didn't tell you he was recording it, for sure, that would be a problem.
They got to give me a piece of paper. It's called the Institutional Review Board at Tufts University.
No. Well, I thought the law legally only required that he make known to you in terms of wiretapping that he's recording the call.
No, it depends upon the state.
Mm.
First of all, there's 2 basic laws with respect to regular wiretapping.
Mm.
One state, you must have one person approval, the
Right.
wiretapper.
Mm-hmm.
Other states, you must have both parties.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right.
That has to be either on the tape recording and or in writing. Because otherwise, it's a you said, I said in the courthouse.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and that's what I mean. If he has a recording, he should have a tape of him saying, I'm recording this.
Yeah, he should.
Say, yeah. And if he doesn't, then you're right. He would have a big problem, especially if he's not in a 2-party consent state. Yeah.
And Tufts got a problem because according to the Institutional Review Board, and I make a complaint, they have a process that they're supposed to go through.
I mean, for instance, speak just for the front of it. I mean, I still have a recording that's probably it's got to be 10 years old now of Peniel leaving me a message that I think would be hilarious if I put it out there, but it would be, but I can't legally because at the time, because I was in Maryland and I don't have his consent, and I'm sure he wouldn't give it because it's so funny. But I mean, but anyway, that's very interesting.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, I don't want to go. I sued.
Mm-hmm.
Tufts University, the bookstore down here is part of a class of bookstores distributed. I knew I wasn't going to win. People don't understand. You don't sue just to win. Sometimes you're going to lose, but you go to make a point. You go for political education. There is more. You don't just fight. Sometimes you fight just to learn how to fight.
Mm.
You do some lightweight boxing in the gym before you get into the Olympic ring. You practice. You lose a few, you win a few. Especially if the deck is stacked against you.
Mm-hmm.
There is a tremendous need to go back and check these details.
So listen, Bob. Unfortunately, I got to start to wrap. We're over 2 hours here, and though I could go would happily do this all day, I unfortunately have to do other
No, I
things. The
understand.
world
I got
just
to go
doesn't
too.
allow me to just do this all day, unfortunately. But before we do go, one, I definitely, anytime you want to come back and lay out anything else, share anything else, elaborate any farther, any of these details, please further let me know. Please let me know. You're always welcome. And then the other part is before you do leave today, please let us know what you and others have planned for African Liberation Day, which we know is right around the corner here. Yeah.
Okay, let me do the last one quick.
Sure.
The AAPRPGC is doing African Liberation Day on May 22nd. I think it's 12 to 3 p.m. It'll be a Zoom YouTube broadcast. So people can just simply go to the party's website and get the download link or upload, whatever they call it, the link, and they can watch it live stream, or they can watch it delayed afterwards. It'll stay up and whatnot. So the party's website is a-aprp-gc.org. And there are plans to do all kinds of other activities, a lot of it because of the pandemic, and also because of our objective and subjective reality as an organization. A lot of it will be live streamed on programs, our programs, other kind of programs. A man named Lee Robinson, who's a member of our party, he is pioneering the whole blog talk radio scene. One of the ones who has a blog talk program, Africa on the Move. And he has a program on the 19th. Let's go to Blog Talk Radio, Africa on the Move. It'll be this conversation again. The difference being is technologically easier because all I have to do is call in, telephone and whatnot. So that activity on the 19th. I'm struggling, I work with Pan-African Roots, which is a 501c3, which is related to yet independent of AAPRP and GC and all this other stuff, because it's very difficult to be a political party and a 501c3 at the same time. We are a fiscal project of the Alliance for Global Justice, which has been around for 40 years. It comes out of the Latin American Solidarity Movement. It provides the fiscal sponsorship for a number of organizations. Some of the independent Black Lives Matter movements, with IFCO temporarily, Pastors for Peace, lost their IRS, AFGJ temporarily gave it to them. They are our fiscal sponsor. And we are involved in a whole bunch of programs, at least supportive. Nicaragua network, some of the Venezuela network, the El Salvador stuff, not independent of CISPAs. It's a 40-year tradition of Latin American solidarity work. And we were one of the founding members of that coalition. But we, number one, are trying to launch our own blog. Our website, number one, Pan-African Roots, and our own blog, which is Notes from the Barricades. I've spent my life at war, everybody, including myself, and whatnot. So it's time to talk about some of that. The Notes from the Barricades the format there's a group called Press Books, which specializes, you write your book, you upload it to the internet, you give the book away free. We will have a series of books, free books called Press Books, ebooks with Paul Coates and Natty over there in Baltimore. So you got Press Books, ebooks, print-on-demand books, Braille books, audio books, not to mention the other technology.
And by the way, that's everyone's place on North Avenue in Baltimore, what I still think is the best bookstore I've ever been to.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And
sorry.
they
Go
have,
ahead, brother
and
Nat.
they have,
Shout out to brother Nat T.
yeah, and they have a nationwide. I mean, they subsidize other African bookstores.
No,
They,
the first time I got one of the reason I learned of their bookstore being in existence, even though I technically grew up not far, down the road in Howard County, Maryland, was I was all the way over in the Red Sea in the military, and a brother gave me a book, and in the front had a stamp of everyone's place on North Avenue in Baltimore, and I said, in Baltimore. And anyway, so as soon as I got back, I showed up in person. But anyway, and
well,
been going ever since. So
just
yeah,
quick. That's the book sales, the bookstore end of it. Nati
right.
is one of the biggest African distributors.
No, I
For
know, but
books.
I know,
Okay.
but that was my point. That he
Okay.
had distributed his books. He was distributing books all around the world, and I know he
Okay.
works with other folks. But I was just trying to point out his global reach. That I had to be on the other side of the world to learn about him being right down the bottom. But anyway, yes, you're right. Absolutely. Go ahead.
And it could be a brand new writer who wants to self-publish for any number of reasons. You take your manuscript to Natty. If he agrees with it, he take you across town to see Paul Coates, the printer, not the publishing house.
Right.
And he'll subsidize the printing of your book. He'll subsidize the movement, the distribution of the book all over the world. So we have a 20, 30. I mean, he printed the slavery book that I wrote 20 years ago. And he moved the first 400 copies to the bookstores, and Paul printed 3,000 of them. And I gave them away free. The kids lied to me. I told them, if you promise you read the book, I'll give you the copy and, sign it and just send me an email saying you read it. I ain't got one email, but that's okay. At least somebody gave a kid a book, not just some grits and margarine. Give them a book. Okay. But anyway, I'm struggling to finish this book that we talked a little bit about on the Panther Party. It focuses on this litter theory, the 5 or 6 national, international litters, the kittens who were the local. Like of the, it's an argument whether the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense had 20 chapters or 45. I can't do all 45. It makes no sense for me to pretend that I know more than Eddie Conway know about Baltimore.
Yeah.
Although Eddie Conway don't talk about the Panther Party before he came. The friends of Snick and the relationship to Snick. Most of these Panther books start at 69. When they came on the scene, when they were born, when that chapter or that kitten came into being. Very few of them go back to 64 and do the detail on Ram, the detail on Snick. So rather than me competing with some of this stuff that's already been written, I want to focus on the stuff that has not been written, number one. And most importantly, I want to focus on the stuff I know as a participant. And I know because I've observed and I've researched.
So for just so people can follow up, if they go to eventually, if they keep up with the AAPRPGC website, they'll be able to get links to
find it.
Everything else that's going on, including what's
Yes.
happening for African Liberation Day. And then and eventually we'll just have to work to get you back over here for more of all of this. And I greatly, go ahead.
Let me just do too quick. And we're not just interested in doing a book or doing a program. We are launching a worldwide movement to change the narrative.
Right on.
The narrative needs to be rewritten. The narrative needs to include people who've been whited out of history, like Mark Clark. the narrative needs to talk about something before we were born, that we inherit, we continue, we reject, we destroy, but the movement didn't start the day we joined it or were born, intellectually or otherwise. So we've already been doing it. We're going to accelerate. And then last, we also have a slave trade project. Since I was in Durban in 2001, and that's a long story, I won't touch it right now. I didn't go with nobody born in America. If I thought she was going through one airport, I went through the airport on the other side of the world.
Well, Bob, when we bring you back, we can start with that story. But,
So
I do need to wrap, unfortunately.
Okay. We're going to do this slave trade book, and we're going to prove that slavery was illegal when they did it to us.
All right, right on.
The slave trade.
Yeah.
Was illegal. Which means everything else, and I'm gone, is a fruit of a poison tree.
Right on. We look forward to that too. And anytime, Bob Brown, you want to come back, we welcome you. So I appreciate you taking this time, and we will definitely say peace to you, because we know you'll fight for it and have been and continue to, and we'll catch you next time.
And I got another word, marriables.
All right. So we won't be marriable, Peniel, or whatever the other one was. But all right, Bob, thanks, man. That's right. We appreciate you, man. Thank you very much for joining us.
Bye-bye.
All right. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. Please come back tomorrow morning. I'm going to see if I can work in what I was going to talk about Roland Martin and Data and Wakiri tomorrow morning on the Remix Morning Show. I'm gonna have to leave it there for now as far as this edition of I Mix What I Like live here in the Black Power Media channel. Please do check out the AAPRPGC website and keep up with that. And come on back at 5 o'clock for the Riot Starter. And actually, I forgot what he was doing at 5 o'clock, but he's doing something dope. Oh, Abi Adum from The Last Poets. We'll be live with Kalanji, the Riot Starter Changa at 5 o'clock. And then tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern for the Remix Morning Show, right back at you. So anything else that I didn't get to today, or if you're watching in the replay, like my man Pierre over at
put it in the comments,
and we'll get to it as much as we can, and as at least try to engage those comments and check it out or respond to it later. But anyway, peace if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. Thanks again, everybody, for being with us for this edition of I Mix What I Like live. Like, share, subscribe, join if possible, and we'll catch you next time. Peace, everybody. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.